The sirens were already screaming when the girl collapsed. Students froze in the hallway, lockers half open, books slipping from hands as the sound of her body hitting the tiles echoed like something breaking that should never break. Mrs. Halston's voice tore through the air, cracking with terror, nothing like the icy, controlled tone everyone was used to. "Somebody help her. Please. Somebody." But nobody moved. Nobody except the boy she'd spent the entire semester tearing down. Jordan sprinted forward before anyone even processed what was happening. His hoodie flew behind him, his backpack dropping with a thud. He skidded beside her, trembling but steady, fear in his eyes but purpose in his hands. "Kayla." "Hey, just breathe," he said, his voice shaking. Her breathing wasn't right. Her lips were pale. Her eyes fluttered. Mrs. Halston fell to her knees on the other side of her daughter, staring at Jordan as if he were someone she'd never seen before. Someone impossible. Someone she had sworn up and down would never amount to anything. "Please," she whispered. "Please help her." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I got her." When the paramedics burst through the doors, they paused, just for a fraction of a second, as they spotted the boy guiding Kayla's breathing, keeping her awake, talking her through panic. One of the EMTs even muttered under his breath, "That kid just saved her." Mrs. Halston let out a sob, covering her mouth, staring at the boy she'd spent months crushing. And in that moment, everything froze. Every rumor, every insult, every dismissal, every time she'd said he was trouble, lazy, going nowhere, the type who ends up on the streets. She had been wrong, dangerously wrong. And Jordan? He wasn't looking at her. He was focused on Kayla. Focused like someone who'd been preparing for this moment long before anyone ever believed in him. A moment later, the EMTs lifted Kayla onto the stretcher and rushed her out. Mrs. Halston followed, stumbling, crying. But before she disappeared through the doors, she turned back toward the boy. Her lips parted, like she wanted to apologize, or thank him, or beg him not to hate her. But nothing came out. Jordan just stared back, chest heaving, sweat on his forehead, hands still trembling. Then, everything cut to black. Because the truth? This wasn't the beginning. This was the moment everything exploded. And it all started months earlier. With a single sentence that would change Jordan's life forever. A sentence spoken in front of an entire class. A sentence that would ripple into betrayal, humiliation, loss, and eventually, the moment he found himself kneeling on the cold hallway floor, fighting to save the life of the person Mrs. Halston loved most in the world. It started with 5 words. 5 poison-filled words. "You'll never amount to anything." That day, the whole class had gone silent. Some had even laughed. One kid looked away because he couldn't handle the look on Jordan's face, a look he'd never forget. But it wasn't the sentence alone. It was what she did next. Because Mrs. Halston didn't just tear him down. She set plans in motion. She manipulated. She sabotaged. She lied. Little by little, she pushed him toward a breaking point, one he didn't see coming. And when the consequences hit, they hit hard. But not yet. Not before the moment Jordan discovered a secret. Her secret. One that would twist the story into something no one saw coming. Something that would make the emergency in the hallway seem like destiny. Something that would tie their lives together whether they liked it or not. And it all began the morning Jordan's name ended up on a list that would change everything. A list he was never supposed to be on. Jordan stared at the paper taped to the bulletin board like it had to be a mistake. Academic probation, immediate review required. His name was the first one on the list. Not alphabetical. Not by grade level. Just first. Students walking by slowed down, whispering before speed walking away like they didn't want to be seen knowing him. A couple of football players smirked. Someone muttered, "Knew it," under their breath. Jordan's jaw clenched. His grades weren't perfect, but probation? That didn't make sense. He had worked twice as hard as half the class. Sometimes 3 times. Late nights, early mornings, study sessions during lunch. He'd promised himself he wouldn't be another statistic. He wasn't going to become what people assumed he'd be. Then a sinking feeling punched through him. He knew exactly who had the power to put him on that list. A shadow stretched across the board behind him. He didn't have to turn around. "Jordan," came the clipped, cold voice. "Mrs. Halston." He turned anyway, because not turning felt like losing. Her arms were crossed. Her expression unreadable. Her tone smooth, almost rehearsed. "You'll need to stay after class today to discuss this." Privately. Jordan swallowed. Why am I on this list? My grades aren't. Grades, she interrupted, are only part of what determines a student's academic standing. Something in her eyes flickered, just for a moment, almost like she was hiding something. I don't understand. You will, she said, already walking away. Jordan stood there stunned, every muscle in his body buzzing like a wire ready to snap. Then the bell rang, and people brushed past him, not even looking at him, like being near him might contaminate their reputation. By third period, the whispers had grown. Probation? Of course. No surprise. He's always been like that. Like what? Nobody ever said. But everybody assumed. Except one person. Kayla. She slid into her seat beside him, dropping her bag with a soft thud. She had the kind of smile that made the noise around him fade. The only daughter of the same teacher who wanted him gone from the school. Don't listen to what people say, she whispered, leaning over. You're not even supposed to be on that list. He blinked. How do you know? She hesitated, too long. Kayla. She sighed quietly. Because you weren't on it last night. Jordan froze. You saw it. My mom was reviewing it. There were 4 names. Then suddenly this morning, there are 5. And yours is the only new one. His heart dropped into his stomach. She added me, he whispered. Kayla didn't answer, but her silence confirmed everything. Jordan looked down at his desk, gripping the sides so hard the metal groaned. Why? What did he ever do to her? Kayla leaned closer. Jordan, my mom is strict. But she isn't. Yes, she is. Kayla's breath hitched. But she didn't argue. She couldn't. Because she knew what her mother was like when she decided someone didn't belong. Still, something in her eyes said she wanted to tell him more. Something important. Something she wasn't allowed to say. Before he could ask, the classroom door opened, and the villain herself walked in. Mrs. Halston. Her eyes swept the room, but paused on Jordan for half a second too long. A stare that wasn't disciplinary. It was personal. The next few minutes dragged like hours. Jordan couldn't focus. Couldn't breathe right. The words on the board didn't look like English. All he could think about was the list, the lies, the target on his back. And Kayla, staring at him like she wanted to protect him, but couldn't choose him over her own mother. Then came the moment that turned suspicion into certainty. Right in the middle of class, Mrs. Halston set down her marker, walked over to her desk, and pulled out a blue folder. She glanced at him once. Then again. Then she smiled. Not a kind smile. A knowing smile. Like she was already 3 steps ahead in a game he didn't know he was playing. Jordan, she said suddenly. See me after class. Kayla's eyes widened. His stomach churned. Not a single student in the room missed the way she said it. And not a single one wanted to be him. Class ended. Chairs scraped. Backpacks zipped. Students filed out fast, glancing back only after they reached the doorway. A few even mouthed good luck, but not sincerely. More like they were watching a funeral procession. Kayla lingered, then walked to her mother. Mom, I need to talk to you about. Not now, her mother said sharply. Go wait in the car. That wasn't. Now. Kayla flinched, then looked back at Jordan with an apologetic, heartbroken expression before leaving. And just like that, Jordan was alone with the woman who despised him. She closed the classroom door with a soft click that sounded louder than a slam. Then she turned toward him, her expression shifting into something strange, determined, almost triumphant. Do you know why you're here, Jordan? He shook his head slowly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice, every word cutting deeper. Because boys like you become men who ruin things. Men who cause trouble. Men who end up wasting everyone's time. He swallowed hard, his breath shaky. And I am not going to let you destroy my classroom, my school, or my daughter's future. Jordan's eyes widened. What does your daughter have to do with? Everything. Her voice cracked like a whip. And that, she whispered, leaning in, is why I'm going to make sure you're removed before the semester ends. The floor felt like it tilted. Jordan stared at her, stunned, unable to move. Why? He whispered. Her reply came fast. Cold. Final. Because you'll never amount to anything. Before he could speak, a hand smacked the door window. Kayla. Her face pale, eyes wide, breath shaking. She mouthed something. 3 words. Words that would twist the story into a direction Jordan never expected. Don't trust her. Jordan stepped back from the door like the 3 silent words had shoved him. Don't trust her. Mrs. Halston didn't see it. She had turned toward her desk, flipping through the blue folder like she was preparing the next phase of whatever trap she was building. But Jordan saw Kayla's eyes, terrified, pleading, as if she knew something much bigger than probation, bigger than unfair treatment. Something dangerous. Before he could say anything, Kayla disappeared from the window. Her footsteps faded down the hallway. And then the door clicked shut again, this time locked. Mrs. Halston slid the key into her pocket. "We're not done." Jordan's pulse thudded in his ears. He stood still, every instinct screaming that something was badly, badly wrong. She laid the blue folder on the desk. Slowly, deliberately, like she wanted him to notice it. His name was printed on the tab. Bold. Underlined. Sit. He didn't move. "I said sit." He clenched his jaw, then lowered himself into the chair, never taking his eyes off her. She opened the folder. "What's in that?" he asked. Her eyes flicked upward, cold as glass. "Everything I need." "For what?" "To build a case." "A case for what?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. She slid a document toward him, a report with his name across the top. But it wasn't his handwriting. The accusations weren't true. None of it made sense. "You're lying," he whispered. Her lips curled upward, barely, but enough to confirm the darkest possibility. "I'm protecting my school," she murmured. "You're trying to get me kicked out." "I'm trying to prevent a problem." "I'm not a problem." "You will be." The room fell silent. Jordan's hands balled into fists. His breath hitched. Anger sat like fire in his throat, but something else was underneath it, confusion. A question he didn't understand until it broke out of him. "What did I ever do to you?" For the first time, she hesitated. Just once. A twitch of the jaw. An inhale held too long. A look, not of anger this time, but something closer to fear. But the moment passed, and the icy mask snapped back into place. "You exist in my classroom," she said. "That's enough." Jordan felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She stood. "You have until Friday to respond to the probation notice. After that, the committee will see the full file." He stared at the forged documents. Fake disciplinary reports, altered grades, notes written in her handwriting claiming he was disruptive, disrespectful, aggressive. It was a setup, a complete setup. His throat tightened. "This isn't right. It doesn't matter." "It does to me. But you don't matter." The words hit him in the chest. Hard. "You'll never amount to anything," she said again, almost calmly now. "And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. For her, for the school, for the story she wanted to tell." Jordan stood so fast the chair screeched across the floor. And that tiny sign of resistance, just standing up, made her eyes sharpen with something that looked like victory. "Leave," she said. He walked out shaking, his heartbeat so loud he heard it in his teeth. But as soon as he stepped into the hallway, Kayla appeared from behind a corner, grabbing his sleeve. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Jordan, don't go home yet. Please. You need to hear something first." "What?" "Not here." She pulled him toward the side stairwell, the one students rarely used. Shadows wrapped around the steps. Her voice trembled. "You were never supposed to be on probation." "I know." "No, you don't." She swallowed. "Because there's more." "What more?" She kept checking the hallway, as if expecting her mother to appear out of thin air. Then she took a breath, a deep, shaky one, and said something Jordan never expected to hear. "My mom didn't start targeting you this semester." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She's been watching you since last year." "Why?" Kayla hesitated again, this one longer, heavier. Before she could answer, a door upstairs creaked open. Footsteps. Slow. Controlled. Getting closer. Kayla's eyes widened in panic. "She can't know I told you anything," she whispered. "Jordan, just go. Please." "Kayla, what's going on?" "Leave." The footsteps grew louder, descending toward them. Kayla pushed him toward the exit door at the bottom of the stairwell. "I'll find you later. Don't let her see you." He backed away, breath shaking. "Kayla, go." He pushed the door and slipped outside, the cold air hitting him like a slap. Behind him, the stairwell door creaked open again. But he didn't look back. He couldn't. He just kept walking, knowing two things with absolute certainty. Mrs. Halston was dangerous, and Kayla was hiding something that could destroy everything. Jordan didn't know yet, but this was the beginning of the downfall. The trap was set. The players were in position. And by the time the truth came out, it would already be too late to stop what was coming. Jordan didn't remember walking home. His feet moved, but his mind was still trapped in that stairwell. Kayla's shaking voice, her warning, her fear. The cold air didn't help. He felt dizzy, like the ground was tilting under him. Why was his teacher, building a case to destroy him? Why target him? Why last year? He kept replaying her face, the folder, the forged reports. But most of all, Kayla's words. She's been watching you since last year. He didn't even know what that meant. By the time he reached his front door, he wasn't prepared for what waited inside. His aunt, Aunt Miriam, sat on the couch, holding an envelope with the school's logo. Her jaw was tight. Her glasses sat crooked on her face, a sign she'd been rubbing her eyes in stress. "You're home early," she said without looking up. Jordan froze. The envelope. The timing. His heartbeat picked up again. Did they call? Email. She lifted the printed letter with 2 fingers like it was radioactive. "Jordan, what is this about academic probation?" He swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything. That's what everyone says." "No, listen to me. It's not real." "It's not." He stepped closer, and she finally looked at him. Her eyes softened just a little. "Child, talk to me." And suddenly he couldn't breathe again. Words felt too heavy, but he forced them out. "She's setting me up. My teacher. She forged reports. She's trying to get me kicked out." Aunt Miriam's eyes narrowed, not in disbelief, but in recognition, as if this wasn't the first time she'd heard something like this. "Which teacher?" "Mrs. Halston." Everything about her posture changed. Her shoulders stiffened. Her jaw clenched. Her hand tightened around the letter until the paper crinkled. "Oh," she whispered. "Her." Jordan blinked. "You know her?" But before she could answer, her phone rang. She checked the screen. Her face went pale. "It's the school." Jordan's stomach dropped. She answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Ms. Miriam," came the voice on the other end, smooth, fake concerned, and painfully familiar. "Mrs. Halston." Jordan felt the air punch out of his lungs. "We're calling," she continued, "because we're worried about Jordan's behavior and academic trajectory. We've tried addressing the issues, but he's become increasingly difficult, and we feel intervention at home may be necessary." Jordan stepped forward. "She's lying." She raised a finger to silence him, not because she believed the teacher, but because she knew something deeper was happening. Aunt Miriam's voice was calm, controlled. "What kind of issues?" "Oh," Mrs. Halston sighed dramatically. "Where do I begin? Disrespect, poor grades, behavioral disruptions, concerning associations." Jordan's fists tightened. None of it was true. But Jordan shook his head. "You don't understand. She's working on something huge. She has a whole folder on me." His aunt inhaled sharply. "A folder?" He blinked. "What?" Kayla nodded slowly. "You're smart, Jordan. Really smart. Top 10 in the school. And she can't stand that I work with you or talk to you. Or," her voice cracked. The hallways were chaos, students running, lockers slamming, papers flying everywhere. A teacher tried to stop them, but Jordan didn't notice. He just followed the screams, his legs pumping harder than they ever had. "Kayla," he shouted. "Where is she?" Her trembling hand pointed to the stairwell near the science labs. He didn't hesitate. When they reached the 2nd floor, the scene was worse than anything he'd imagined. Kayla's mother was standing frozen, eyes wide, pointing at a cluster of students surrounding her daughter. Kayla's legs had collapsed under her. She was coughing, shaking, trying to pull herself up. Jordan didn't pause. He pushed through the crowd, adrenaline surging, ignoring the protests of other teachers. "Get back," Mrs. Halston shouted. But he ignored her. He reached Kayla and knelt beside her. "It's okay. I've got you. Just breathe. Look at me. Focus on me." Her eyes filled with terror and relief. She grabbed his hand. "Jordan, I can't." "Chill. Just breathe. I won't let anything happen to you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then came the sound of a loud crash, something heavy falling from the lab shelves. The smell of chemicals made his nose sting. Jordan's mind raced. He couldn't just wait. He had to act. He pulled Kayla carefully toward the open doorway, shielding her with his body. Mrs. Halston's face turned from fear to something else entirely, shock. And then anger. How did you?" she started, but her words trailed off. Because Jordan didn't just act. He saved her daughter. The students around them gasped. Some whispered. Some stared in disbelief. Paramedics and administrators rushed in moments later, but Jordan was already kneeling next to Kayla, talking her through every breath, every panic wave. Mrs. Halston's voice cracked as she shouted, "Jordan, you weren't supposed to be here." Jordan finally looked at her, his chest heaving. his hoodie soaked with sweat, eyes blazing. "I was supposed to let her get hurt," he said, voice low, fierce. "She's alive because I acted, not because you approved it." For the first time, her authority didn't matter. The paramedics lifted Kayla carefully, checking her over. She clung to Jordan's hand even as they guided her toward the stretcher. Mrs. Halston followed, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something. But she couldn't, because for the first time in years, her power had failed. Jordan stood there, chest heaving, watching them leave. A part of him wanted to collapse. A part of him wanted to scream. But most of all, he felt something he'd never felt before. Respect. For himself. Because he had been underestimated, belittled, told he'd never amount to anything. And yet here he stood, unbroken, having saved a life that mattered more to the world than anyone had ever told him he could impact. Kayla's eyes met his before she disappeared down the hall. Her smile was small but genuine, a silent thank you that meant more than words. And Mrs. Halston? She was frozen, staring at the space Jordan occupied. The icy mask was gone. In its place, disbelief, fear, and the faintest flicker of shame. But she still had one last card. "Jordan," she whispered, almost to herself, "this isn't over." Jordan didn't respond. He knew it, and he was ready, because this was no longer about grades, probation, or unfair rules. This was about proving something far bigger. That no one, no teacher, no system, no adult, could define his worth. Not anymore. And the fight was just beginning. The next morning, the school was buzzing, not with gossip about grades, or tests, or petty rivalries. It was about him. Jordan. Students whispered as he walked down the hall. Teachers glanced up, eyes wide. Even administrators lingered near doors, murmuring into phones. Everyone had heard, somehow, about what happened with Kayla. He didn't stop. He didn't look around. He just walked with his head high, every step a statement. And then, the announcement. The principal's voice echoed over the PA, formal, hesitant. "Attention students and faculty. We have a situation to acknowledge. Thanks to the quick actions of one of our students, Kayla Halston is safe." Jordan Thompson acted decisively and heroically during an emergency yesterday. Jordan's heart raced, disbelief and pride colliding. And his actions have reminded us that courage, integrity, and character are more important than paperwork, bias, or assumptions. Let this be a lesson to us all. The hallway erupted. Students cheered. Some even clapped. A few teachers nodded, impressed. And Mrs. Halston, she stood at the back of the auditorium, lips pressed tight, eyes flickering from fury to shame. Her daughter was smiling at Jordan, whispering something that made him grin without realizing it. Kayla mouthed the words, "You saved me." Jordan's fists clenched, not in anger, but in triumph. By the end of the week, the forged documents were discovered. The school committee had reviewed every report, every altered transcript, and the truth came out. Mrs. Halston's credibility crumbled. Administrators promised stricter oversight. Some parents were furious. Some students whispered that she had finally gotten what she deserved. Jordan didn't celebrate. Not loudly. He didn't need to. He had already won. He had survived the cruelty, the lies, the betrayal. He had saved a life. He had proven himself, not to the teacher who doubted him, not to the system that tried to hold him down, but to himself. Kayla approached him after the assembly, a small smile on her face. "You really did save me." Jordan smiled back, shrugging, trying to play it cool, but the relief and pride in his chest made him feel taller than he'd ever felt in his life. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Guess I did." She nodded, her eyes shining. "And I'm glad it was you." He laughed softly, a Real laugh this time, shaking off the tension of months of fear and doubt. And for the first time, he felt it. The freedom that comes with finally rising above the hate, the injustice, and the assumptions of others. The boy everyone said would never amount to anything had just saved a life, exposed the lies, and proven that courage and heart could outshine every ounce of doubt. And as he walked down the hallway one last time that week, students cheering quietly, whispers of admiration trailing behind him, Jordan knew one thing for sure. Nothing, not a word, a teacher, or even a system, could ever define him again. He had faced the storm, and he had risen. And that was just the beginning.